The Lord hears the prayers of the humble-hearted. The first reading reminds us that even though God plays no favorites, the Lord seems to be more attentive to those who humbly admit that they need God's help. In the typical style of the wisdom books, today's reading from Sirach states a truth which at first seems contradictory. Sirach proclaims that God shows no partiality in answering prayer. Yet, at the same time, God always hears the humble prayer of those who cry out to God in need. You see, God hears all authentic prayer. God responds to all true prayers. Maybe not exactly as they are presented, but in a way which is a true blessing for the one who prays. The Lord does not turn away from the sincere prayer of those who acknowledge their need for God. And then there are those who selfishly request things from God and do not always have their prayers answered, at least not in the way that they want. The key to this paradoxical theme is in the attitude of the one who prays. Those who can honestly admit their need for God's help will receive it, while those who only mechanically or in a superficial way, almost as an afterthought, call upon God, receive responses in proportion to their acknowledgement of God's ability to help them. Now, turning to our gospel, Jesus tells us a parable about those whose pride gets in the way of their prayer. Two individuals enter the temple to pray. A Pharisee who sees himself better than all others, especially this sinful tax collector off to the side here. The Pharisee publicly does everything by the letter of the law so that he can be admired for his righteousness. Here's a line from our gospel today. I don't know if you caught it. Quote, "The Pharisee took up his position and spoke this prayer to himself. O God," end of quote. Spoke this prayer to himself? The Greek translation implies that he was alone. However, this is not a mistake. The particular translation, to himself, could mean that he prayed to himself. The Pharisee does not really need God's help, since he is already justified in his own mind. Yes, it would be nice if God would agree with him, but even that is not necessary. The tax collector, on the other hand, humbly, contritely admits that he needs God's help and God's spiritual healing. He can honestly confess that he is not perfect and that he wants a better relationship with God. What is our relationship with God? In our prayer life, what is our attitude when we enter the presence of the Lord through prayer? Have I turned to God in prayer, hoping that God would pat me on the back and say, "Great job, Father Sam"? Has my attitude been prideful? Am I doing God a favor by turning to the Lord Jesus in prayer? In that case, I am no better than the arrogant Pharisee in the parable. We must humbly come into God's presence, acknowledging who God is and how much we are in need of God's help. It is often at those times that we will sense a closeness in our relationship with God. The focus of prayer should be to admit our dependence on God. We must constantly keep in front of our mind for whom we are running the race and who it is who makes it all possible. Then we can give God all the praise, all the thanks, and all the glory as we echo the words of the psalm today. The Lord redeems the lives of the servants of God. No one incurs guilt who takes refuge in the Lord.